起きてください。ねえ、起きてってば。おはよう。
おはよう。
あ、今日雨が降るかもしれないから傘持って行って。急がないと遅刻しちゃうよ。
行ってきます。
いってらっしゃい。おかえりなさい。
なんかさ、家で誰かが待ってるっていいもんだな。
Well, it is the holiday season, but that's not stopping some college students from playing Scrooge and agreeing to sign a petition to cancel Christmas.
This time of year feels like people can shove their holiday happiness in your face, Merry Christmas, ooh, and it's just, it gets kind of old.
So we're just sending a letter to the administration to be like, hey, this can be almost oppressive for some people. Would you guys like to sign?
I will totally sign.
Yeah. So what was were you surprised by the response of these kids on campus?
I wasn't. I've been on campuses around the country with Leadership Institute's Campus Forum, and there's one thing we see, and that's the students are so afraid of offending anyone that they don't stand for anything, and this is something they get from the administrations. If we're going to start banning holidays based on what could hurt someone's feelings, are we going to ban the 4th of July because not everyone celebrates America? Ban Groundhog Day because, groundhogs, those are animals that are being entrapped, and so that's offensive. Right. Yeah, are we going to just start banning random holidays?
Wait, so some people say, oh, you just picked a couple of clips. How many people do you talk to? What percentage of people agreed to sign the petition?
We were out there for about 2 hours. We got about 40 people that we talked to. The only people that didn't sign it were the ones that said, no, I'm in a hurry, I got to go. The people that actually stopped and listened to us, pretty much all of them signed it. This was not selective, none of that.
What was your argument? What did you say to them to get them to say, you know what, yeah, I will sign this?
The moment I said, I feel oppressed, or the moment I said, we've had some students that felt triggered because of these Christmas decorations, it was like a key word. The students perked up and they said, oh, well, I have to support this, absolutely.
As the school day comes to an end at Point Defiance Elementary, there's a religious battle brewing.
I think the students who participate in this are going to be very excited as well.
It's what some call a battle between good and evil.
We don't believe in the devil, we don't believe in God. We're a non-theistic religion, and Satan to us is a literary figure. He's the hero that stands up against religious tyranny.
The Satanic Temple of Seattle wants to start a Satan after-school club at the Tacoma Elementary School. School district officials say the request to host a Satanic after-school club at the elementary school was unusual, but they must accommodate the request.
We realize there is a state law and also a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that says we have to rent our facility to an organization regardless of their viewpoint. So we do have a Christian-based organization that rents space from us for their program, and now we have made the space available to this other organization.
There is opposition that's flown in from across the country.
America is one nation under God, and we want to keep it that way. But the Satan Club attacks God, undermines moral values, and really is un-American.
Anything that represents the name of the word Satan, to me, is anything but evil. And I don't appreciate the fact that they're letting evil come into a safe haven of learning for our kids.
America's state-sponsored media is set for a shakeup. The U.S. Congress recently voted to abolish the Broadcasting Board of Governors and replace it with a single chief executive appointed by the president, who would ultimately be in charge of all outlets that receive federal funding.
It seems that the U.S. Senate has found a very interesting way, quietly, without much fanfare or coverage. They tucked in a reform into the latest National Defense Authorization Act for next year, which would mean that the Broadcasting Board of Governors, the organization which had 9 members, including the U.S. Secretary of State, and was destined to control the state-owned media for its unbiased approach to news will now be basically run by a single person, by a CEO appointed directly by the president. And you would think that this is a new thing with Trump coming into power. But in fact, most of these reforms have been happening under President Obama, and he still is in office. So this is something coming from there. Nonetheless, this new provision would mean that all the organizations within the BBG, which includes Radio Free Europe, Voice of America, will now have their senior officers, will now have their editors appointed by a special designated CEO appointed by the President of the United States. So
Germany's Justice Minister Heiko Maas believes that German authorities should make it a priority to prosecute the perpetrators of fake news on different social media platforms. He stated defamation and malicious gossip are not covered under freedom of speech. Justice authorities must prosecute that even on the internet. Anyone who tries to manipulate the public discussion with lies needs to be aware of the consequences.
Well, Donald Trump may have won the U.S. presidential election, but he faces one last hurdle, the Electoral College, which convenes on Monday to vote for America's 45th leader. Technically, it has the power to block him, and electors are facing immense pressure from those hoping to scupper a Trump presidency.
Normally, when the electors get together, no one really pays attention. After all, it's just a formality, rubber stamping the presidential vote, right? Well, not this year.
It's as bad as it gets for the electors. They are being bullied into changing their votes, accused of failing to fulfill their duties, and Democrats are calling for the vote to be postponed, or even for the college to be scrapped altogether. Celebrities made this video to increase the pressure on electors.
Republican members of the Electoral College, this message is for you.
The Electoral College was created specifically to prevent an unfit candidate from becoming president.
I'm not asking you to vote for Hillary Clinton.
But it should certainly be someone you consider especially competent.
You have position,
the authority, and the opportunity to go down in the books as an American hero
who changed the course of history.
Our founding fathers built the Electoral College to safeguard the American people from the dangers of a demagogue.
Anti-Donald Trump demonstrators staged rallies in several U.S. cities ahead of the Electoral College members' convention to finalize the November 8th election outcome. The demonstrators in New York, Los Angeles, and Denver denounced the president-elect's campaign rhetoric toward immigrants and minority groups. The rallies were held on the occasion of International Migrants' Day. Trump has pledged to deport millions of undocumented immigrants after taking office in January 2017.
The U.S. intelligence community appears to be in agreement on Russia's involvement in the 2016 presidential election. But Donald Trump's incoming chief of staff says the president-elect needs the evidence.
I think he would accept the conclusion if these intelligence professionals would get together, put out a report, show the American people that they're actually on the same page as opposed to third parties.
CIA Director John Brennan has met with both FBI Director James Comey and Director of National Intelligence James Clapper to discuss Russia's alleged interference. But there still hasn't been an official release or statement outlining evidence connecting Russia to the DNC hacks or outlining the Kremlin's motives in interfering with the election. This uncertainty and secrecy led lawmakers, including some Trump supporters, to demand a briefing on Russia's motives and influence. But so far, those demands haven't been met.
U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch has been avoiding the answer to a very obvious question. In a recent interview with Jake Tapper on State of the Union, Lynch was asked about an incident last June, in which she met former President Bill Clinton privately on a plane in Phoenix, Arizona. When asked how the visit happened, Lynch was vague in her response. Tapper went on to ask via information from Trump's campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, that President Clinton's coming to her on the plane bothered some voters because it, quote, played right into the culture of corruption, the notion that there is a different set of rules for elites like the Clintons. Lynch responded, "I wish I had seen around that corner and not had that discussion with the former president, as innocuous as it was, because it did give people concern." But she did not elaborate further. This may lead people to wonder, is Loretta Lynch not telling the truth, or did the people see something she didn't?
Tourists in Jordan are free after an hour-long shootout between police and attackers at a historic site in Karak. The attacks began with gunmen targeting police outside the Crusader-era castle and ended after the gunmen took over the tourist site, trapping visitors inside. As police worked to capture the gunmen, footage of tourists fleeing the area was captured. A Canadian, 3 civilians and several police were killed in the attack and dozens wounded. No group has claimed responsibility.
The war of words is heating between Egypt and Qatar as the Egyptian government linked the Persian Gulf Sheikhdom to the bomb attack that took place in Cairo. At least 25 Coptic Egyptians were killed and scores injured when a bomb went off inside St. Peter's Church near the country's main Coptic church on December 11. Immediately after the bombing, Cairo claimed that the mastermind behind the attack, Mohammed Sayyid Qasim, had traveled to Qatar in 2015, where he met with Muslim Brotherhood members residing in that country. Officials accused Qasim of returning from Qatar to carry out terrorist attacks in Egypt with full financial and logistical support from the Muslim Brotherhood. Qatar's foreign ministry rejected Cairo's allegations angrily. Egypt-Qatar relations have been on the rock since the 2013 military coup that ousted former President Mohamed Morsi. Here in Cairo, the general consensus is that Doha is determined to destabilize Egypt by supporting militants. And for the time being, nobody expects the 2 Arab nations to heal their political rifts.
India is preparing to test its Agni-5 intercontinental ballistic missile designed and developed by the country's Defense Research and Development Organization. Agni-5 can carry nuclear warheads and is considered more than adequate to meet the current threat perceptions. Only the Indian Prime Minister has the power to launch this missile. It can cover a range of around 5,500 kilometers and reach targets in China.
This is an interesting missile because for the first time it kind of covers territories in China, just like the Chinese missiles cover territories of India. So there is a parity on the ability to cover each other's territories, which is interesting.
Only Russia, China, the US, Britain and France currently possess the capability to operate an intercontinental ballistic missile. India plans to conduct more tests for a number of short and medium-range missiles and has been pursuing its missile program aggressively.
Braving the chilling cold, thousands of people, young and old, have taken to the streets of central Kashmir to call for unity among all Muslim nations.
This rally is not only for what we are facing now, but also for the sake of our future generations.
We're here to show our unity to the enemies of Islam, who try to fan the flames of division among Muslims.
Participants in the rally also urged Muslims to be aware of West's anti-Islamic plots and stand up to them.
Now, world powers are working hard to punish North Korea for its continual nuclear missile provocations, and part of these efforts include clamping down on the regime's access to energy sources. But it appears Pyongyang is getting some outside help from its longtime ally.
Lately, Pyongyang state-run media has been broadcasting news about leader Kim Jong-un's plans to develop energy sources. A report released by the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission says North Korea's energy situation has improved in the recent weeks. It said China has been supporting North Korea's energy needs. The report says China has increased its shipments of raw materials to the north as the number of vehicles operating in the country and the number of imported cars from China has increased sharply. The revelations are likely to spark concern as other world powers have been focused on strengthening sanctions on North Korea as part of international efforts to rein in the regime's nuclear and missile ambitions.
Thousands of cars remain off the road in Beijing as the city goes through a second day of an air pollution red alert. It is the first time this year that authorities have issued a 5-day warning for smog in the Chinese capital. Schools have been closed and residents have been asked to stay inside their houses. The government has also declared a lower level warning in 23 other cities across north and central China.
Japan has begun slaughtering around 2,100,000 farm birds in northern Hokkaido in an attempt to contain another outbreak of avian flu. This is the country's 5th mass call this winter. Authorities are working to prevent the spread of the highly contagious H5 strain, which has been detected at several farms across the country. But officials say progress has been slow this time due to low temperatures and falling snow.
The government found another different strain of avian influenza in local poultry birds, marking the first time Korea has had to deal with two strains of bird flu at once. The Agriculture Ministry says the H5N8 strain was found last week at a chicken farm in Anseong, Gyeonggi-do Province, about 80 kilometers south of Seoul. H5N8 is less pathogenic than the H5N6 strain first reported in mid-November. Experts claim it will be difficult to contain both strains at once, especially in the cold winter months, and with new reports of H5N6 still coming in. Quarantine officials have already culled more than 14 million birds and plan to dispose of 3 million more in the coming days.